What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, and today, taking a look at a storyline to keep an eye on during training camp. Now, I'm really excited because New York Giants training camp begins this week. I can't wait for these Giants rookies and veterans alike to get on the field with one another and get practicing and preparing for the 2025 season. It's been a long offseason. It's been a busy offseason. The Giants got a lot of work done, signing a bunch of players in free agency, having a stellar 2025 NFL draft. But here we are through OTAs, through mandatory minicamp, and through that long break in between mandatory minicamp, and now training camp is ready to kick off. So I want to talk about some of the rookies to keep an eye on, but in particular, there are three undrafted rookie free agent wide receivers that the Giants signed this offseason who began to turn some heads during the spring practices that I want to mention as guys to keep an eye on going into training camp. So I'm going to go ahead and start out with Beau Collins, the undrafted free agent rookie wide receiver out of Notre Dame that the New York Giants signed. So he actually started his career at Clemson, but went to Notre Dame for his final collegiate season, transferred over there, had a decent season. I think he put up about 5 touchdowns and 500 yards. But throughout training camp, throughout OTAs and mini camp, he began to turn some heads for his versatility. And the versatility is really the key factor here for a couple of these guys, because when you're an undrafted rookie that signs with a team, they don't really have much of a reason to keep you around unless you force their hand, right? Because there's no financial incentive to keep you around. You're a cheap contract. You're pretty much just a camp body until you prove otherwise. And one of the ways that these undrafted players are able to prove otherwise is by demonstrating that they can contribute in more than one way and be a depth piece at more than one position. And for Beau Collins, so far that's proved to be true. He does have some special teams experience from his time at Clemson, and that special teams experience has been utilized so far here with the New York Giants, as he has contributed in the special teams facet of the game during the spring training. But the real key versatility factor that he brings to the field is on the offensive side of the ball. Although he stands in tall as a bigger wide receiver with a body type that you would expect to be featured on the outside, Beau Collins is actually a player who has the ability to play both inside and outside. Throughout the spring, he took snaps not only just as an outside wide receiver, but he did move into the slot and contributed there as well. So having that versatility to move into both spots, I do think is important, because when you look at this Giants depth chart, on the outside, they of course have Malik Neighbors, who, yes, does have the ability to move inside and outside, but is an outside wide receiver. Darius Slayton as well is an outside wide receiver. Jalen Hyatt, although, I've said this on the channel before, I think that he should move inside. He is an outside wide receiver in the eyes of the New York Giants. And then in the slot, they have Wan'Dale Robinson, and kind of an open competition for depth behind Wan'Dale. So for any of these wide receivers, these UDFAs, these young guys who are fighting for a roster spot, they all should be kind of trying to attack into that slot receiver position, in my opinion, because that is the more open of the two avenues to get onto the field and to make an impact. The Giants, I think, need more slot receiver depth, which is funny enough because I think 3 years ago we talked about how all they had was slot receivers and they needed more size at the position. But slowly they have added that size to the position. They have added a good amount of outside receivers, and now I do think they could use some additional depth in the slot. And Beau Collins, again, uniquely enough, can contribute both on the outside and in the slot, and could be good depth at either spot if he continues to develop throughout this summer. So definitely keeping an eye on Beau Collins. And then there are 2 other UDFA wide receivers who have similar versatility that are worth keeping an eye on during training camp. And as for some final notes on Beau Collins, he is a 6'3", 200-pound wide receiver. So again, having that outside receiver size. And last season, he had 490 yards on 41 receptions and 3 touchdowns for Notre Dame. The season prior, though, his final year at Clemson as a junior, he had 510 yards and 3 touchdowns. Had at least 3 touchdowns in every single season of his collegiate career, a career high of 5 touchdowns as a sophomore for Clemson, but pretty consistent player who averaged around 37 yards per game throughout his career. Had a career high, though, in that 2023 season with 46 yards per game. But again, and one other final note on Beau Collins. on top of him having the versatility to go inside outside, he did receive some first team reps during the spring when Jalen Hyatt, well, actually backtracking, Malik Neighbors didn't participate at all during the spring practices. He was dealing with that toe injury, as we reported here on the channel. And so Jalen Hyatt was playing with the first team in place of Malik Neighbors, but Jalen Hyatt then suffered some sort of a hamstring injury towards the end of mandatory minicamp, missed some snaps with the first team, and Beau Collins did get into the first team lineup and contribute with the starters and compete against them, and did catch a touchdown pass with the first team from Russell Wilson. So the fact that he was first up, he earned those reps, I think says something, says that he was turning heads and playing at an impressive level during the spring. And hopefully that does continue into the summer. And maybe he can go ahead and make something of himself and hopefully earn a spot on this roster as a depth piece. I think that would be interesting to follow for Beau Collins. Now, another UDFA wide receiver who earned first team reps with the Giants during the spring was Dalon Camry out of Louisiana. Not Louisiana State, just Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns. This is a player who only had 10 career receptions as a wide receiver during his collegiate career with Louisiana. However, he was a great special teams player. And that's why it is kind of a surprise that he earned some first team reps with the offense as a receiver during the spring practices, but nevertheless, he did catch some passes. I think even caught a touchdown pass from Russell Wilson during those practices. But focusing in on him and what he could provide to the Giants, we know that special teams depth is something that they are always trying to improve on, always looking to add extra contributors, whether that's at the gunner position or elsewhere. And Dalon Camry could definitely be a contributor and honestly could make the 53-man roster quite realistically because of his ability to contribute on special teams. He finished second in the country in special teams tackles in 2024. He was also Louisiana's holder for place kicks. Usually you see the punter or the backup quarterback as the placeholder on field goal attempts, but for Louisiana, it was actually wide receiver / special teamer Dalon Camry, and he earned first team All-American honors from Pro Football Focus and second team honors from College Football Network for his work on special teams. So the Giants basically finding a special teams ace here, a guy that can do a lot for them in the third facet of the game. And again, I think that he's somebody to keep an eye on during training camp because of his ability to specialize on special teams and to contribute there in more than one way, having the versatility to not only be a placeholder, but also a gunner and to make tackles and plays on kickoff and on punts. He's a player that I think uniquely could make the roster as a UDFA rookie. He doesn't need to fight through the depth chart and get ahead of other guys on the depth chart like a Jalen Hyatt or anybody in the receiving core. Instead, he's just fighting through the special teams core. And honestly, the Giants might look at that as an opportunity to save some money, release some other players, and go cheaper at the position with a UDFA like Dalon Camry, who was one of the best special teams players in the country this past season for Louisiana. And he has a proven track record of great special teams play. He started his collegiate career in 2020. He had 5 seasons of college football under his belt. Didn't really play much in 2020. Redshirted that freshman year, but appeared in 13 games, and 14 games for Louisiana over the last 4 seasons. And like I said, put up more tackles or second most tackles on special teams in the country last season. So a really good special teams player. I know that the Giants have a few guys that they like on special teams. Bryce Ford Wheaton is one of them who they signed as an undrafted free agent a couple of years ago out of West Virginia. 6'5", 4.4 40-yard dash, 4 40-yard dash. He's an absolute freak of nature and a real fan favorite because of that, but he hasn't been able to get on the field as consistently. Injuries have been in the way as well. But Dalon Camry, a young rookie, fully healthy, coming off of a great career in terms of his special teams acumen, I definitely think this is a player to keep an eye on, as he might be able to make some plays on special teams during the preseason and somehow walk away with a roster spot going into week 1 in early September. So definitely keep an eye on Dalon Camry when it comes to special teams play this summer for the New York Giants. So now one last rookie UDFA wide receiver that I do want to mention here is Jordan Bllye out of Gardner-Webb. And like I mentioned with Dalon Camry having some ability to contribute on special teams, having tremendous ability to do that, same goes for Jordan Bllye. Jordan Bllye has been participating in practice throughout the spring as a punt returner and kick returner. And he's a player who's much different than the other two guys that we mentioned that both have, some size. Bo Collins being 6'3". You've got a 6-foot receiver / special teams player in Dalon Camry. And then Jordan Bllye is different. He's 5'9", 175 pounds, very small, a little bit undersized, but very fast. Ran a 4.36 40-yard dash with a 1.47 10-yard split, which is super impressive. Ranked at a 9.90 according to relative athletic score in his 10-yard split. So a lot of burst, very agile. Also had a 4.87 shuttle time and a 6.72 three-cone time. All of those metrics ranked in the elite according to relative athletic score. His vertical is 36 inches, which is above average, and his broad jump was 10 foot 7 inches, which also was an elite score. He's obviously grading out very poorly in terms of his size, as he is very short and he is under weight at 175 pounds for a wide receiver. However, that agility, that quickness, and that ability to play as a punt returner could help him contribute this summer and maybe earn a roster spot. The Giants are definitely looking for more reinforcements in the special teams facet of the game. That's why they had Jordan Bllye in as a UDFA. That's why they brought in Dalon Camry and to some extent also Bo Collins, as he does have some experience as a gunner during his time at Clemson. The Giants clearly want to upgrade their special teams unit and add more depth there, but also get these young guys with some talent to grow and develop behind the scenes as potential contributors on offense as well. And I think all three of these receivers, Collins, Camry, and Bllye, have the possibility of turning some heads throughout training camp and earning a spot on the 53-man roster. So potentially, or at least onto the practice squad. I think all three of these guys have demonstrated that they deserve a spot on a practice squad, whether that's the Giants or someone else's. I think they proved that during the spring. So keep an eye on all of these guys. I think that they're definitely worth watching during training camp. And I'm curious to see if any of them do impress enough to make the 53-man roster. Plenty of competition this year. Giants have a lot of backup wide receivers that they like. Zach Pascal is somebody that they signed this offseason. And of course, there are other players as well. But these three UDFAs, I think, are worth keeping an eye on. Now, anybody else that I would throw out there, last one being Antoine Wells Jr. Juice Wells played for Ole Miss this last season, was previously at South Carolina, demonstrated a connection, of course, with Jackson Dart as his quarterback at Ole Miss, had a pretty good season. Very different receiver from everyone else that we just mentioned, isn't contributing on special teams the way that these other guys are. However, on the offensive side of the ball, he does have an ability to catch it and run with it. Yards after the catch machine, very powerful, a lot of energy when the ball is in his hands and tackle breaking ability. So that's the idea there with Antoine Wells Jr. We'll see if that translates to training camp, and if it translates into the preseason, perhaps he can work his way onto the roster as well. But mainly the other three guys that I mentioned, and I guess this fourth in Antoine Wells Jr., those are the UDFAs that I'm keeping a close eye on throughout training camp. But of course, as any other UDFAs start to pop up and any of these rookies start to make some plays and catch the attention of the reporters at training camp, you guys will learn about that right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. Comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. And if you're listening to Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, I'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one. And let's go New York Giants.
Perfect.